Good evening. We will get started in just a few minutes. Good evening. Welcome to the beautiful McDonald Hall here in the Armstrong Center. My name is Greg Schaller, and I am the director of Centennial Institute at Colorado Christian University, and we are so excited to have all of you here for what I think will be a very special evening, one that you'll remember for quite some time. We are honored to have some really extraordinary people joining us here this evening. We gather tonight at a time of unmistakable stress in the West. Across Europe and North America, the institutions that once seemed sturdy, family, church, the academy, even democratic self-government, feel increasingly fragile. Public trust is thin. Freedom is often redefined as autonomy without responsibility, and many of the moral assumptions that have undergirded Western civilization for centuries are no longer shared or even understood. Western civilization did not arise by accident. It was forged at the intersection of Athens and Jerusalem, reason and revelation, where the dignity of the human person was grounded not in the will of the state, nor in the passions of the individual, but in the image of God. From that conviction flowed ordered liberty, limited government, equality under the law, and the robust protections of conscience that have allowed diverse people to live together in freedom. But when the moral and spiritual foundations erode, the superstructure cannot stand indefinitely. A civilization cannot sustain human rights if it forgets why humans have rights. It cannot defend liberty if it no longer believes truth exists, and it cannot cultivate virtue if it loses confidence in a transcendent moral order. Tonight's presentation and then conversation that will follow centers on three essential questions. What is happening to the West? Why does faith matter for a coherent and life-giving worldview? And why is religious liberty not merely one freedom among many, but the first freedom, the freedom that protects all the rest? Our aim this evening is not nostalgia nor alarmism, but clarity. If we are to renew what is best in Western civilization, we must recover confidence in the truths that made it possible. That human dignity is real, that freedom is ordered to truth, and that faith is not a threat to the public square, but a vital contributor to it. Again, we are so grateful you are here for what promises to be an important and timely conversation. As we do with all of our events at Centennial Institute, we begin with prayer, the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll have the introduction of tonight's speaker. So please join me in welcoming three of our great CCU students, Millie Friedrichsen, Caleb Constancio, and Lucy Polvote, to get our program started.
Please join me in praying. Dear Heavenly Father, in Zechariah 3:2, you refer to your people as a brand plucked from the fire. Lord, thank you for plucking us from the fire. You have written such beautiful stories out of the brokenness of this world. Lord, may you bless Ayaan Hirsi Ali. May her story motivate us to pursue after you more and see your light in darkness. I pray that her presentation would open our eyes to new truths about your world and motivate us to pursue justice for your children. We love you, Lord, and we thank you for rescuing us. Amen.
If you please join and stand in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Vishal Mangawati once wrote that goodness and truth are being replaced by debauchery and depravity. Everywhere we look, it seems like things are getting worse. Wars are breaking out. People are suffering. Terror is on the rise. And there is an inexplicable desire in all of us to do something about it. But why? Why should we care about what is happening thousands of miles away in Europe, or even 15 minutes away in downtown Denver? We must care because these times mark a dangerous shift in our society. Once time-honored values inherent to Western civilization, such as human dignity, individualism, and liberty, are under attack externally and internally. Those who attack this value system from the outside want it rewritten or even gone. Those attacking it from the interior believe the lie that it should be gone. Yet without this Western tradition and the truth of the gospel, our civilization as we know it crumbles to the ground. Mingawati is right. Goodness and truth are being replaced by debauchery and depravity. But our story doesn't end there. More than ever, we need to remember what defines our civilization and embrace it, because our speaker this evening knows exactly what is at stake if we fail to cherish our heritage. In fact, she grew up in a world without it. Ayaan Hirsi Ali was born in Mogadishu, Somalia in 1969. As she grew up, she embraced Islam and strove to live as a devout Muslim. In 1992, Hirsi Ali fled to the Netherlands to escape a forced marriage. There she was given asylum and, in time, citizenship. She quickly learned Dutch and was able to study at the University of Leiden. After declaring herself an atheist in 2002, Hirsi Ali served as an elected member of the Dutch Parliament from 2003 to 2006. Hirsi Ali then moved to the US and in 2007 authored her best-selling book, Infidel, and founded the AHA Foundation to protect and defend the rights of women in the US from harmful traditional practices. Her book, Heretic: Why Islam Needs a Reformation Now, was released in 2015 and once again broke the headlines as a bestseller. Hirsi Ali professed her faith in November of 2023, and in 2024 founded RestorationBulletin.com, where she explores the forces of subversion plaguing Western society. Now, she is here at Colorado Christian University to share her story and to rally us to return to the principles which make the West prosperous. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving Ayaan Hirsi Ali a warm welcome to the stage.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Lucy, for that kind and generous introduction. I also want to thank Calvin. He's not here, he's right there in the back, and Madison. I just met them, incredible students. The school is doing a great job. I want to thank one of my heroes today, Kristen Waggoner, and I think she's just doing an amazing job. Thank you, Jamie, Greg, and President Hogue. And then I want to say a special thank you to two people who are here tonight, John and Jill Nelson. I don't know where they are, but there are times when I think I wish I was a baby and they had adopted me, but that's not going to work because they're younger than me. Please put up with me because I've got this popping, my ears are popping and I can't get the air out. So if I have these little funny pauses, that's what's happening. My name is Ayaan Hirsi Ali, and I'm going to spare you a long biography. I was born in Somalia, I was raised a Muslim, I fled a forced marriage, and I found refuge in the Netherlands. I served in Parliament, I moved to the United States, I became a citizen, I wrote a couple of books, and I discovered that telling the truth is an excellent way to make yourself lifelong enemies. During the fireside chat after this speech, I'll be talking to Kristen, and I'll get a chance to tell you about my life. but I wanted to use this opportunity to tell you a little bit about my work. I'm in the business of analyzing ideas, and ideas, more than any army or any government, are what shape the destiny of human beings. Some ideas liberate, some ideas enslave. The most powerful ideas of all often they evolve into the ideologies that shape political and social life. I'm not interested in analyzing every ideology. I can't do that. I have criteria, and 3 of them. An ideology must meet all 3 before I decide to devote my time and energy to digging in deeper. The first is adherence. An ideology must command genuine commitment, not a bumper sticker, not a retweet. The kind of commitment where people give their time, their money, their careers, and sometimes their children, sometimes their lives. I'm fascinated by the ideologies that ask you to die for them. And I'm even more fascinated by the adherents who say, yes. If an idea cannot generate that level of devotion, I give it a pass. The second is mobilization. Adherence alone is not enough. I pay special attention to ideologies that move whole peoples. It must be capable of organizing masses across borders, across generations, across centuries. Not just mobilizing a crowd today or tomorrow, but mobilizing for all time. I'm not interested in an ideology that burns bright for a decade and vanishes. I'm riveted by ideologies that seek to recruit for the next generation before the current one is buried. And then my third criteria is the pursuit of state power. Not every serious ideology wants the machinery of state. Its laws, its courts, its schools, its military. But I am mesmerized by the ideologies that do, that want the institutions of education and socialization to transmit their values, the ideologies that want legislation to enforce them, that are not only interested in your consent, but also in your control. By these standards, the tulip mania of the 1600s was not an ideology. The Salem witch trials were not an ideology. The Labubu craze that recently swept the world was not an ideology. They inspired passion, panic, and questionable purchases, but not permanence. By this measure, I have narrowed my focus today on only 3 ideologies. You need to know all 3, because whether you like it or not, they are going to define the next chapter of your life. I'm talking to the young people here. The first is what many today call woke. I just call it what it is. It's Marxism, and it's updated for the 21st century. Karl Marx divided the world into the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, the oppressors and the oppressed. And today's disciples, they simply swap out the economic categories for racial, sexual, gender, climate, and borders. But the logic is identical. Society is a power structure, they say, and they say the structure is corrupt. It must be dismantled, and the dismantling is a moral imperative. As for adherents, walk through any elite university faculty lounge in America and find me someone who doesn't believe that systemic racism is the defining feature of American life. They believe it completely, so completely, they teach it daily, and they're making it absolutely certain that their children believe it too. From there, momentum follows. What began as a theory now controls schools, newsrooms, federal agencies, and boardrooms. Marxists of the last century dreamed of this. The progressives of this century achieved it without firing a shot. That is mobilization on a civilizational scale. And state power? Look no further than New York, where a card-carrying member of the Democratic Socialists of America, sworn on the Quran, inaugurated by Bernie Sanders, now governs 8.5 million people. And do not think for a moment that New York City is an outlier. This pattern is spreading across this great nation. The ideology doesn't stay contained. It follows the institutions, and the institutions are everywhere. Ask a committed Marxist the purpose of their life. The response is immediate. Their story is whole. Evil oppressors, righteous oppressed, and a glorious liberation waiting on the other side of history. The second ideology of interest to me is Islamism. I want to be precise because precision matters here. I'm not talking about Muslims. Not all Muslims are Islamist, but all Islamists are Muslim. I'm talking about Islamism, the political ideology that seeks to impose Sharia law as the governing framework for all human life everywhere by any means necessary. Islamists place politics and power in the center of their faith. They worship the god of domination and conquering power. A Muslim who is not an Islamist will quote Muhammad, considered a prophet and the founder of Islam, and he will say, "Unto me my religion, and unto you thine religion." An Islamist will acknowledge that quote, but will respond, Muhammad said that in Mecca and not in Medina, and Medina abrogates Mecca. There is no more committed class of adherents on earth. Islamists will give not only their money and their time, they will send their sons to die. They will strap explosives on their daughters. They'll endure prison, exile, and torture without renouncing it. This is a worldview so total, so complete, that death inside it feels like victory. Islamism has been growing steadily since the 1920s, when Hassan al-Banna founded the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Today, it operates in virtually every country on earth, including America. It has state power in Iran. It governs in Gaza. It has significant influence in Turkey, in Pakistan, in many parts of sub-Saharan Africa, and increasingly and sadly in Western Europe. In some neighborhoods of London, Paris, and yes, New York, Texas, in Virginia, in Michigan, and Minnesota, it is the dominant cultural force. And the same forces are at work here in Colorado, in the communities you cherish. Last year, Mohammed Sabri Suleiman launched a vicious attack on participants in a solidarity walk for hostages taken during the October 7 attacks in Israel. Armed with a flamethrower and a Molotov cocktail, he set upon the crowd. At least 7 people were injured. an 82-year-old woman, a Holocaust survivor, died weeks later from the burns she suffered. In 2023, Hamza Mashkoor, who was then a teenager living in Westminster, was arrested at Denver International Airport attempting to fly to the UAE en route to join ISIS. These are not distant stories. These are your neighbors, our neighbors. These are the products of an ideology that has found fertile ground right here in our backyard. Again, ask a committed Islamist the purpose of his life. The answer is swift and absolute: to submit to Allah, to implement His law, to bring the entire world into that submission. I said I was fascinated by Marxism and Islamism. I am in some ways even more intrigued by their partnership. We have come to call this, those of us who analyze ideas, the Red-Green Alliance. Marxists and Islamists, they have nothing in common. Not theology, not history, not vision, not even a shared future. And this, ladies and gentlemen, brings me to my third idea: America. Sociologists and political theorists talk about an American civil religion and an American creed built around propositions like equality, natural rights, popular sovereignty, and constitutionalism. This is a recognizable belief system that interprets the world and prescribes political obligations. Americanism is explicitly described in the literature as an ideology or as a cluster of ideas oriented around loyalty to the United States and to certain political ideals: constitutional democracy, individual rights, rule of law, national mission. Some of my colleagues will say it's more accurate to say there are American ideologies that all claim to be the true meaning of America. Different readings of the Declaration, Constitution, national purpose, rather than a single contested idea of America. They're right. But if you define ideology in the strictest sense that I have done, mass adherence, long-term mobilization, and state power, then the American project, especially the American creed, as articulated in the founding documents, and civil religion very clearly qualifies as an ideology under my own criteria of interest. I am transfixed by the American creed more than the other two. For starters, I find it a far superior one, and I'm not embarrassed to say that. This idea of America, it begins in Jerusalem. It runs through Athens, passes through Rome, survives in the Magna Carta of 1215, is refined in the English common law tradition, and arrives on these shores as a revolution in human thought. That the individual is sovereign. This is the inheritance that the other two ideologies are trying to destroy, that they are forming an alliance against, even though they have nothing in common. The American idea has a loop, a self-correcting mechanism that neither of its rivals possess. Marxism promises liberation, and it delivers the gulag. Islamism promises moral perfection and paradise, and it delivers brutal theocracies while life is short and nasty. But the American idea has built into its architecture the capacity for revision, repentance, and renewal. The Civil War was a catastrophe, but it was also a correction. Women's suffrage was long overdue, but the system produced it. That loop, that feedback mechanism, rooted in the sanctity of the individual conscience before God, is the most remarkable political innovation in human history. And it produces. Remove the West from the picture. Remove the American-led moral order and ask yourself, what replaces it? You go back to subsistence. You go back to caste systems where your birth determines your ceiling. You go back to a world where women are property and descent is a death sentence. The prosperity, the medicine, the technology, the rule of law that billions of people enjoy or aspire to exists because of this idea and the civilization it generated. America's soft power is extraordinary. The whole world watches America's film. The whole world listens to American music. American culture has conquered the globe for decades. There is an appetite for what America represents. People risk their lives crossing deserts and oceans to get here. They're not fleeing toward socialism. They're not fleeing toward theocracy. They're fleeing toward this. Now, here is the question that ought to keep you up at night, young people. If the American idea is so compelling, so proven, so desired by people that have never had it, then why are we ceding the field to radicals? In the 20th century, a Soviet defector named Anatoly Golitsyn wrote a book called New Lies for Old. He was a KGB intelligence officer who came to the West and spent the rest of his life trying to warn us. The international communist movement, he argued, had identified the West's greatest vulnerability, its culture. Convince a people that their civilization is irredeemably corrupt, and they will dismantle it for you, willingly, enthusiastically, and they'll call it progress. The Islamists read from the same playbook. Different theology, identical strategy. Capture the institutions, shape the narrative, exploit the openness of free societies, the freedom of speech, the freedom of religion, the freedom of association, to work against those very same freedoms from within. And it works like magic. In part, because of a peculiar cultural phenomenon, I think of as Minnesota nice. If you've ever been to Minnesota, you know what I mean. Minnesotans are extraordinarily polite. They don't want to cause offense. They'll stand in the cold for 10 minutes saying, "No, after you," before anyone gets through the door. In a neighborhood, that's charming. As a civilizational strategy, it's an obituary waiting to be written. Bad actors study your niceness, the way a predator studies pray. They learn that if they accuse you of racism, you will apologize. If they accuse you of Islamophobia, you will retreat. If they claim offense, you will capitulate. And every capitulation teaches them to push harder. Meanwhile, we undersell. The Reds market their ideas relentlessly. The Greens, the Islamists, they do the same. On our land, in our towns, and in our cities, they're selling a replacement for everything we built. And we respond by apologizing for the very fact that we exist. No country in history has been better at marketing things than America. We sell blue jeans, a brown, nutrient-free drink called Coca-Cola, and blockbusters to people who have never met an American. We sell the dream of America to people who've never set foot on this soil. But we have stopped selling what actually makes America great. We have outsourced our story to people who hate us. That's our problem. So what is the product? What is this thing worth defending? I have come to the conclusion that the first product is the Bible. The idea that every human being bears the image of God, Imago Dei, is the most consequential idea ever introduced into human civilization. It is the idea that no ruler is above the law because God is above the ruler. It is the idea that individual conscience matters. The second product is the founding documents, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, inspired by the Bible. Read them. Let the words resonate. Quote, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech. End quote. No sentence in the history of human governance has protected more freedom. Not one. Know it. Defend it. Teach it to your children. This is your inheritance. And there are people here, now in this country, who want to take it from you. They want to replace it with something that has failed everywhere it has been attempted. From Cuba to China, North Korea to Cambodia, the record of Marxist rule is written in repression, in famine, and tens of millions of deaths. Islamism has been tried. Iran, Afghanistan under the Taliban, Gaza, Somalia. The results are the same: war, suffering, stagnation, and the attempt to eliminate everyone who dares to disagree. Christianity produced hospitals, missionaries, the abolition movement, and the recognition of human dignity as a non-negotiable category. America produced the highest standard of living, the greatest scientific output, and the most successful multi-ethnic democracy in human history. These are the fruits of ideas carried faithfully across generations. I want to speak to the students for a moment because the future will rest most heavily on your decisions. You are at a Christian college in Colorado. You hike You ski, you wake up, you look at the Rockies, and you feel that something in this world is worth loving. You're right. Hold on to that. Because what I am describing, the Red Alliance of neo-Marxists and the Green Alliance of Islamists, is explicitly designed to tell you that everything you love about this country is a crime. The world is not Minnesotanized. It's never been. There are people and movements animated by ideas that are totalitarian to their core, ideas that have never, not once, produced anything but misery and mass graves. To confront them, you must understand what they believe. Read Marx and read the foundational texts of Islam, political Islam. Know the arguments you're going to face before you face it. An enemy you understand is an enemy you can defeat. But equally, and this is where I see the greater failure, you must know what you believe. Not vaguely, not as a set of feelings. You must know why the American idea is better. You must know the argument. You must be able to make it clearly, calmly, and without apology. Know your Bible. Communism has never built anything worth celebrating. Islamism has never produced a civilization you would choose, but America has. Christianity has. And the evidence is all around you, in churches, in the courts, in the freedom to sit in this room and hear a woman born in Somalia tell you that your civilization is worth defending. That is not nothing. That is everything. Now, go and sell it. Thank you.
Please welcome the CEO. Please welcome the CEO, President, and Chief Counsel of Alliance Defending Freedom, Kristen Waggoner, and the President of the Colson Center, John Stonestreet.
I wasn't expecting the voice of God there. That was a little bit unexpected. Ayaan, thank you so much for those wonderful words. Do I have the best job in the world right now? I get to sit between these two brilliant thought leaders and leaders in general and have just an incredible conversation. And it is an honor for both Kristen and I to be a part of this conversation with you, Ayaan. My name's John Stonestreet. I'm president of the Colson Center. We're one of the sponsors of tonight's event, along with Colorado Christian University. And Kristen, of course, needs no introduction as the CEO of the Alliance Defending Freedom, such a wonderful organization, doing a lot of the things, Ayaan, that you encouraged us all to be involved in. But I want to begin by asking you a question, just directly. I was really intrigued when you offered as the third ideology Americanism, and then went and sourced it very specifically in the Bible and the biblical idea of the Imago Dei. Why describe the ideology as Americanism instead of Christianity?
I think it's a professional tick or something. I did it because a lot of my colleagues, sociologists, I'm a political scientist, so political science, sociology, history, we talk about ideas, and ideas are abstract. And we've, I think, come through almost a century, if not more, of My colleagues, those who taught me, those who inspired me, those who introduced me into the West, leaving Christianity, leaving the Bible out of the story. As in, we have this idea, we're going to compare French Revolution to the American Revolution to the English Revolution, and I studied all of that, and we always began with the Greeks and the Romans, and we came down, and there will be a little bit of attention paid to Christianity, but then it was just, it was just a side note there. And I don't know what you do in this school, but in most schools, that's what's done. And I see as my mission to say, they've been so foolish, and maybe some of them are really trying to do their best to say, this will make it interesting for non-Christians too, or lapsed Christians, or you name it. And I find that if you are in the business of saying, I just want to pursue the truth wherever the truth leads, you are not being entirely honest if you leave America and the foundational principles of what we now call America and even Western civilization, if you leave Christianity out of it, or if you diminish it, or if you make it small. I think you're not being entirely honest. And I'm just saying, I've only been in the West for 30-something years, and this is what I'm seeing. There's no way I can go around it. Yeah.
I've heard you talk about how gender ideology and the gender ideology activists and the movement there is kind of converging with Marxism and also Islam, and it's kind of all at the same time, sort of moving along together and even somewhat building momentum. Can you explain how you think about that and why those things are connected in this moment?
Well, for the moment, what they tell us is that they're connected in, so if I listen to Islamists very carefully, they have decided Christianity, Judaism, the Bible, America, Western civilization, that's the enemy. That's the enemy according to Islamists because it defies the truth they believe in. It's not what the Quran dictates. It's not in the Hadith. It's not the project that Prophet Muhammad brought about, which was to have everyone submit to Muhammad. And so they hate America unless America converts, and so on. And they have done a study into what is the trick, like what strategy should we follow? Should we engage in jihad, which they have tried? 9/11, 2001, take passenger planes and then sort of stun America into thinking we submit. And America wasn't stunned. I mean, Flight 93, there were people there who understood on the flight that the plane was going to the White House and diverted it. So I think for the first time they realized, heavens, these people believe in their own thing too, just like we believe in our own thing. But then they've started to explore other ways, and subversion, which is, we always think of it as, subversion is also a means of war, but it's the means of war deployed by weaker people, which is, you don't need to engage with an enemy that is militarily superior, economically superior on that level. That would be stupid. You would have to, since Sun Tzu, we knew that you can do it slowly, internally, and then just take your time. So it's called gradualism. So that's what the Islamists are doing. The Marxists, as you know, which I think most people here are more familiar with, they too have engaged in that. They think America is in the way of their utopia. Capitalism is in the way of their utopia. Individualism is in the way of their utopia. Churches and faith in Christ, and what that is in the way of their utopia. Now, they tried to make that economic argument in the 19th and 20th century, which failed dramatically. And then over time, and I think in the third world, they thought maybe the way to go around that is to make that identity argument. The identity argument now is the white, straight male is the oppressor, and everybody else is the oppressed. And then to convince you to atone for the past, your past, by warping that story. But I come from Somalia. I am black. I am female. And so when I read this stuff, and having lived through that, I think, hang on a second. That's just not true. There's this, it's my Quran teacher who fractured my skull, and it is that Italian doctor volunteer who operated on that skull. And he didn't even ask for anything. How am I to hate that man now? And they talk about colonialism. And I think, what colonial? I was born in 1969. Somalia became independent in 1960. All the repression I have known was by black men. So when you all got excited, oh, we are going to have a black president, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, yeah, I've always had black presidents. It's not the color of his skin. It's about the ideas. And it's the validity of these ideas. And the more I dig deeper, the more I read, the more I get to know this country, the more I get to know you, the more I think, on the one hand, my gosh, this is just amazing. I wish I would take the Constitution and transplant it everywhere in the world. I want to take the Bible everywhere in the world. And at the same time, I want to tell you, quit being Minnesota nice.
You want to follow?
Yeah.
One of the things that I think is so compelling when you speak is that, you know, we can bring in academics and deep thinkers to talk about these subjects, but you come from a different place. There's a level of experience and firsthand knowledge that you have. So I just want to spend a minute talking about that firsthand knowledge so that our audience truly understands where you've come from. So you talked about being born in Somalia, but you weren't just exposed to Islam. You had a faith in Islam. And then you went from that to atheism.
Yeah.
Will you talk for a minute about that journey? And then also in the Netherlands, what happened to you there that even forged more courage and more viewpoints before you came to the US?
Okay.
Not all of us have the same kind of experience that you do.
Yeah.
And it is important to share it.
So what's going through my head right now is that I'm going to annoy my publisher and my literary agent, because I'm working on a book called Why I Am a Christian, which explains that. And the problem in the book publishing and book writing world is you've got to save all the interesting bits for when the book is published. Otherwise, people know the story and they won't buy the book. So why am I going to defy my publisher? I don't need the money.
Well, if you tell the story well, they'll all buy the book anyway. Just tell them that.
You don't have to buy the book. I live under threats, as some of you may know. And if I were to fall down dead now, and you would want to have, if I were to ask for an engravement on my grave, my memorial, whatever, I would say, Ayaan Hirsi Ali, a broken woman, saved by the grace of Christ, who tried to understand that grace. And that is essentially, when I was a Muslim, I tried to be such a good Muslim, because the only way to get love from your parents, to be loved, was to show how devoted you were to them and to God. But the God of Islam had rules and I had to follow those rules, and I tried so hard, and I failed all the time. And God punished us, and my parents punished us, and the Quran school teachers punished us. There was this constant punishment. But in a way, I was also programmed into believing in rules and becoming and adhering to rules without questioning them. Because every time I questioned them, I got punished. Then I became an atheist. When I was in Holland, it was after 9/11. I went to the University of Leiden, I felt enlightened. And the moral question at that time for me, and I think maybe people my age, was, what do I think of what these 19 men have done in New York and in Washington? And I thought that was evil. But if I thought that was evil, could I just stop thinking about this at the level of the 19 men, or take it deeper and down to think, what do I believe? Because I understood immediately that they believed they were carrying out Muhammad's rules. What did I think about the Prophet Muhammad? And that pushed me into rejecting Muhammad. And then I became an atheist. And what did atheism teach me? It taught me that everything is about human reason. It's human reason that makes us. And what atheism taught me is it divorced faith in God, from reason. If you had faith in God, you were dumb. If you're a Christian, you're unintelligent, stupid. You're afraid of the dark. That's literally what some of my best friends said. And if you were a Muslim, you were a fanatical, crazy person who was driving passenger airplanes into tall buildings. And so let's just ditch God and faith and put your trust in reason. And I did that. And it was fun. Until it wasn't. Because as time went by and I started to struggle with life, I became depressed. I became sad. I was afraid. Everybody was telling me, oh, she's the most courageous woman in the world. I was saturated in fear and worry and anxiety. I hated myself. I was disgusted by myself. I don't know why these things came up. I didn't understand them. And what would reason make you do? Reason would say, and I would reason with people, first of all, it's practical. You know, if you're afraid for you and your family, you should go and get security. So yeah, we did that. Then the next thing was emotional. Find a therapist, because that's what we do in America. We find therapists. And I'm talking to these therapists, and one of them is telling me, oh, you're worth it, you're beautiful, you're amazing. Go look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself, I'm amazing. And I thought, she's selling narcissism, pure and simple. So none of these things worked. And then I obviously ended up going to a psychiatrist. I'm not saying psychiatry is bad or wrong or any of that. I'm just saying it didn't do anything for me. I got to a point where I was drinking so much. I was sedating myself with drink. They were giving me antidepressants, but the antidepressants were stupid and boring, and they left me. You had a glass of wine, and then another glass, until it wasn't good. I was doing this at a time when I'm married to the best human being on the planet, have 2 amazing children. I'm celebrated. Everything is so good. Why am I doing this? I didn't understand it. You helped me understand it. And by the time I end up in rehab for the second time, there's this woman who listens to me, all of these details of all my life. She reads all the psychiatric reports, and she says to me, you are spiritually bankrupt. And that sentence knocks me out. For the first time in a long time, this made sense. But it wasn't based on reason, and I had to do something about it. And I had to, if you have any of you in recovery, AA programs, reading the books of psychology, what are your values, this, that, and the other. And I just thought, so am I supposed to go and believe in God again? And that therapist was saying, you can believe in whichever God you want. You can be a Buddhist, you can be this, you can be a Mohammedan. And I just thought, wait. I didn't understand, I didn't know, but I think it might have come up. I had become familiar with Christianity. I had become familiar with Christ. And I thought, instead of pretending to believe in something, I'm going to choose, and that was a choice. I'm going to choose who my God is going to be. And the God I'm most attracted to is Christ. And I'm going to go on my knees, and I'm going to pray to him. And I said, I surrender to you. I don't know why this is happening. I went through all the moments in my life when there were all these things where I had nothing to do with it. I could have never saved myself. Maybe you saved me. Please save me again. And then I got, a few years later, I got baptized. I try to live as a Christian now. Now, I'm not telling you my life is perfect, but I think the thing that the publisher doesn't want me to reveal is this. That for about 2 years and 2 months, I stopped drinking because I defined, that's what rehab does, right? They define your problem as the drinking. And then out of nowhere, in the best moment of my life, I relapsed. In my atheist years, I would have simply concluded, 1 + 1 is 2, that is reason. I relapsed because there is no God, and I have put my faith in this stupidity. And I would have gone back into depression, and I would have gone back into rehab, and I would have gone back. That's not what happened. What happened is, instead of going back and falling into that pit, I said, God, what do you want from me? Why are you doing this? And what it led me to is reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, listening to theologians, and there are 3 conclusions. When you're faced with trials and temptations, God wants to form you, to correct you, to direct you. And I said, what are you doing, God? Why am I doing this? And that is, the rest of the story is in the book. But thank you. Yeah. But I think the message in the end is, my relationship with Christ is not I follow the rules and he's going to reward me. My relationship with him is I am saved through grace. Amazing Grace is my favorite hymn, and I always go back to it and I say, what is the grace in this? And the grace in this is, and the service, what is maybe it's just to come and tell you, remind you of that grace, especially if you're young. That you will fall, you will stumble, and you will think God will punish you because you followed the rules, or you didn't follow the rules, or whatever. And it is, no. I thought I was always unlovable. And now I believe God loves me unconditionally. And it is through his grace that I will see the next day. It's through his grace. It's just something he wants me to carry on.
Can I just ask one more thing? Just
Yeah.
one more thing, and then
I
I
have a
promise you can
question,
have 2 in a
too.
row. You can have 2 in a row.
I get 2 in a row?
But I get 2 in a row.
All right, I get 2 in a row.
But I guess I want to know, I mean, you have been I don't want to attach like what my impression has been. Your people prior to this were those that we would generally characterize as being on the left. And that the values that you stood for, the equality of women, free speech, all of these things you felt were rooted in that secular humanist tradition, and that's where the smart people were. And now you're articulating that you need Christ. And some could hear that as it's as a crutch, or wondering, you're not throwing out the intellectual tradition. You're bringing your faith into the intellectual tradition to make the case on this. Can you just talk for a minute about that shift? I mean, you literally were one of the five, for those that don't know, you're literally one of the 5 horsemen on the new atheist movement. Richard Dawkins is your close friend. He has mocked you relentlessly for believing in the resurrection of Christ, and yet you are standing here applying the traditions and the intellect that God has given you and making the case for Christianity and why that is the right thing in terms of ideologies. Just riff on that for a minute, because I just keep getting, like, I'm so, that just lights me up, that it's not a crutch, that you are applying your intellect and what you have learned, and what you didn't just ascribe to a faith, you studied the faith before you came into it.
Well, what I heard with Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, is like, as a clique, we prided with the emphasis on pride, we prided ourselves on being those who pursue the truth, wherever it leads. So when I had that confrontation in public with Richard Dawkins, he said Christianity is all about sin. And I replied, it's about love. Now, love, of course you can reason your way into and out of love, but I think that just like faith, it occupies a different dimension of humanity. And so what I found with my clique of friends was, as long as a clique, it's a faith, atheism is just another faith, but as a clique, we all agreed with one another, we were all reasonable, obviously we all just refer to science, everybody else is dumb, stupid, whatever. So we centered our relationship around pride. So as long as things are going well, you can remain proud. It's just when things fall apart, now you have secrets. I couldn't tell my breakdown. I couldn't share my breakdown with my friends. That is, I think, where if you center your life and everything around pride and everything is perfect, that's fine. But what about those vulnerable moments? And when I look into, what this woman generated in me, again, was this pursuit of truth, reading the Bible, listening to sermons, trying to understand who is this figure, Christ, and what does that even mean? He loves me unconditionally. What does that mean? Does it mean I can just go, like, do whatever I want? Can I try him, like nudge him, poke him? And actually, yes, because every time I find myself at my most vulnerable, it's not, I don't go to Richard Dawkins, it's that faith clique, reason doesn't answer those needs. These are much, much deeper. And you don't even understand why you have those needs. And so, but faith, my faith in Christ, now gives me an answer that not only fixes things for me as an individual, but it also requires of me to be of service to others. Go and talk about this. So when I was an atheist, I was in the depths of shame, guilt. Now I can come and share that shame and guilt with you and say, we are sinners. And Richard Dawkins talked about sin. But sin, I think the way he talks about it is, his image of God is, that's a God who hates me. It's like Allah. The true understanding I now have of sin is, yes, we are sinners. We are broken people. I crave that glass of wine and I sneak it in behind my husband. And that's dishonest. And then I look at Jesus and I know he's not going to burn me in hell or punish me. My relationship with Jesus is, you can do better than this. And when I read the Bible, it says there's this constant struggle within you that is between the flesh and your spirit, what God designed you to be. That is conscience. Do you get that? I didn't have that with Islam, the development of a conscience. I didn't have that with atheism. And it tells you something about our society. Look at the whole Epstein, what do we call it? The word scandal doesn't do it right. What is everyone interested in? What does it say about our society? What is everyone interested in? They're interested in, there are three things, in my view, to this Epstein thing, and it is, there's a moral crisis, there's a criminal aspect to it, and there's an institutional crisis. And it seems as if everyone is focused on, are they going to get prosecuted? Are they going to get the crime? What happened to the moral? Why did the most responsible, most privileged individuals in Western society engage in this thing? Where was their conscience? If you ditch Christianity, which is the only Christianity, Judeo-Christianity, if you're biblical, this is what I am learning, is that what the Bible does is it gives you a conscience. And the conscience is not from outside. It's not what others will tell you, how you will look to others. It's what you own, it's your relationship with God who's telling you, you can't do this. And if you have a developed conscience, if we had developed the conscience of our elites, they would not develop an elaborate conspiracy to rape and exploit the most vulnerable. That's what makes Christianity unique.
Can I go now? Okay, thank you.
I mean, if you don't want to,
No,
I'll take your turn.
I've got 5 questions. It's interesting that you described the clique, the new atheist clique, as being one around pride. And also that your ideology that you covered today wasn't secularism, it was wokeism.
Well,
in the
it's
90s, but in the 90s, secularism didn't look like wokeism. The sort of political philosophy or the vision of reality that the Dawkins and the Harrises and so on were portraying to us on the left did not look like the irrationality. And I'm just struck by is it irony? Is wokeism a child of that secularism? Is it
I'd say partially.
Yeah?
Partially. So secularism, the idea that we can just divorce faith from reason, and then we can elevate and idolize one reason while we diminish the other faith, that started, and I'd say maybe in the 17th century. It's what we call the Enlightenment. I don't think that all Enlightenment philosophers were like that. I don't think that they realized what that would lead in the end to. I think they felt suffocated by churches and people who were practicing Christianity in a way that suppressed curiosity, innovation, and various freedoms. And so that was a reaction to something. I don't think that if Descartes had lived today, he would not have liked the woke. But I think you are absolutely right to trace back to that time, that when you have that divergence and what we call, I believe in human reason, that is secularism, and that secularism can be, you can take human reason to define humanity, human institutions, human flourishing, and we're going to get somewhere. That obviously inspired Karl Marx. So he is, Yoram Hazony will tell you, among other people, that Karl Marx would find himself in that lineage of the Enlightenment, even though he may be rejected by some of, but then even Marx, I don't know if he understood that a Lenin would come about, or a Stalin, or a Maduro. I think he would have rejected him. This is, I think, why the idea of Marxism is still so potent, is because they think it's done the wrong way. Let's try it again somewhere. Let's just do it one more time.
I get another one. Okay.
Yeah.
Permission granted.
Thank you. The other thing that I was struck with, my first question, if you remember, way long ago before she asked 3 questions.
Yeah.
I was just really struck by your willingness to say what a lot of people either wouldn't say or won't say, which is the roots of America is not in secular Enlightenment philosophy. It's in the Bible. It's in the image of God. It's in Christianity. You've only been a Christian for a short time.
Since 2023.
Since 2023.
Yeah, January 2023. And I was baptized in September of 2024.
By being here, all of you have agreed to buy the book. Okay, that's the. I don't know if you knew that.
You don't have to buy the
It's in the ticket. It's in the ticket contract. No, but there is a infliction, Chuck Colson would say, of American Christianity seeing the faith as being privatized.
Yeah.
You have done a moving and remarkable job describing how personal your faith is. But that was after you articulated the public ramifications of the image of God. And I wonder if you would have something to say to the church. Do you agree that one problem that inflicts the American church is this radical privatization, that Christianity is just me and Jesus and doesn't have broader implications to the wider world? And, American Christians are super allergic to have ramifications for politics or for the political sphere. What would you say? Do you agree that that's a problem, and what would you say?
So I wholeheartedly agree with that. And again, I keep going back to, if I just dispassionately try to follow the truth, it leads me to, why is this country great again? I go all the way, and every time, everything I discover in the Bible and since, I think, oh my gosh, yeah, there it is. It's not my intellect that's leading me. I think it is Christ holding me by the right hand and leading me to righteousness. And sometimes I fall and stumble and suffer and all of the rest of the personal stuff that we need. And that maybe that's something also we all have to go through. I don't think that you can take, and this is what makes biblical truth different from these other pretended truths and man-made religions, is it's not easy. It's not abstract. It's not, I'm just going to go get myself an instant gratification truth. And that's just not how it works. That's what I'm finding now. The story I hear, and this is what I want to share with you when I speak to my European atheist friends, even my European Christian friends, even my American who don't want to talk about Christianity in public, is we have had all these wars. So if you go to Europe, they were killing each other in large numbers, worse than in Somalia, worse than in Afghanistan, about little disagreements in the Bible. And so they had come to this conclusion. The people who fled here and founded America and established America will have freedom of religion. And we're not going to talk that much about it in public. There is the realm of politics, and then there's the church, and you believe in what you want. And that worked for a long time because no one challenged it from outside. But now when you come in and you challenge it from outside, when the communism, whether it was from inside or outside, radical Islam from inside or outside, you've got to respond with something. If the Islamists are winning hearts and minds, in Houston, Texas, the largest growing faith is Islam. People are seeking meaning, and they are being given meaning because the Christian churches have decided, you know what, we're not going to proselytize. No more missionaries, at least not on American soil. We'll go to Africa. No, go to Houston, Texas. Go to Colorado. Go to California. So that is what you hear. The truth is, it's complicated. A lot of it is well-intentioned.
One of the things I've heard you said that I quote probably more than I should, but I really believe it was, and I think it really puts it in the good view is you have said something to the effect of Christianity is the operating system
yes.
for Western civilization.
Absolutely.
And without it, the apps don't work. So
Yeah.
for anybody under 30, you know what that means.
Yes, it is
And I
the
just,
opposite.
it's like, I can see it.
Yeah.
And that you come, so that's really been helpful for me to think about it that way. When I first met you, it was shortly after you had publicly announced that you were becoming a Christian, and we were supposed to talk about these things and policy, but what I really wanted to know was how a public atheist who is devout in that belief and advocating for it could come to Christ, and what that journey looked like, and maybe what started it, because it's more than just one thing. And I had the privilege of asking you about that, and your answer really shocked me in a way I never would have expected. So we have that on video, and they asked if they could show that just for a minute. So let's watch the video. So we just share a little bit as we transition into the world and what's ahead with Islam and all the ideologies, into what caused you initially to say, I'm not sure that this is right, and opened you up to consider.
Yeah,
Christianity.
well, I thought atheism was the epitome of reason and tolerance. And I don't know if I was in the East Coast somewhere. And this whole story broke about some guy who didn't want to bake a cake, and some people who were going to make him bake a cake. And I looked into the story and I thought, so these two people love one another. And it was right around the time, the whole gay people can marry had been accepted. Some of my best friends are gay. And when we came from Holland, for instance, my two lesbian friends were married according to the law in Holland, but when they came to Los Angeles, they were not. And we had now gone through this milestone where in America, their marriage was accepted. And lots and lots of gay people were getting married, and there was this couple, and they wanted to get married. And do you know what I think of wanting to get married? It's like you bring in your best friends, and you celebrate this intimacy, this person that you love so much and that you want to spend the rest of your life with. That is the one thing you absolutely do not want to politicize. And here was this couple. You could have, this is the capitalist nation of the world, okay? You could have a cake baked anywhere. But they wanted to have this man bake their cake, and they were going to take him to court, and they were going to humiliate him. And to me, it was illiberal, it was intolerant, it was the very opposite of reason. It was so grotesque, I couldn't understand it. And that was, I think, for me, the first time I thought the seeds of doubt were sown in my mind on why atheism is absolutely wrong. It reminded me of the Marxist schools in Somalia. It reminded me of Islamism. It is, we have our way or no other way. And later on, of course, I learned who this man, the baker, and Jack Phillips was, and I cannot, my admiration for him is infinite, because all he did was just stand in his faith and humbly stand in his ground, and his fortitude. That is the example, the inspirational example that he said. That is what I related to more than all my years of atheism. And maybe that's sort of what knocked me off my atheist days.
Can you believe that?
I would have baked that couple a cake, but they didn't want it. They wanted to politicize their union. And it's the opposite of what marriage is. It's the opposite of what weddings represent. It's just wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's a pretty amazing thing to think of what you referred to at the time as an obscure baker helping one of the leading atheists of the world reconsider her worldview.
Yeah. Good for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, Ayaan, having you say that, and the first time that you said that to me, and for the audience, we didn't know each other. You didn't really know what ADF or Alliance Defending Freedom was, and you certainly didn't know that I had argued Jack's case at the Supreme Court or had been litigating it for 12 years. You didn't know those things. And so for me, that that's a milestone in my faith, to realize that God works through the guy down on Wadsworth with the tattoo parlor next door and the cannabis shop in the strip mall. And he's just doing his best and what God's called him to do, and yet he can change and impact the world and others in it. And I guess I'm just wondering if you could address that obscure baker now, what would you say to him for his stance?
So we're talking about addressing the guy who refused to bake the cake.
The Colorado baker.
Yes, that is courage. That is faith. It's inspirational. You've got to stand. I'm not pushing people into danger, but if you compare what Christ himself went through to I'm not going to bake a cake, I think I would say I'm not going to bake a cake. You stand inspirational for me. And I'm looking again at young people and say, what I told you that day, which was maybe my seeds of doubt about atheism was sown then. Because if I based everything on reason, that was the most unreasonable thing I have ever seen in my life. And I just remember reading it in the news story and thinking, I'll bake you a cake. Why do you want this man to bake you a cake? I mean, what's that about? Plus, you're getting married. There's another thing about that is one of the most intimate, sacred things that you want to do. Why do you want to use that as a political tool? That's crazy.
Well, it could have been just as easy for that baker to come to that same conclusion of why not just bake the cake.
Yeah.
But he didn't, and you heard his story. And he's here tonight and would love to meet you.
Yes.
So,
And
Jack Phillips, will you come?
Yeah.
Jack Phillips.
Such a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
How are you? Good.
Yeah. Thank you.
So this is a little bit of a surprise for Ayaan.
Thank you so much. I didn't expect it.
But you are, he's just right down the street. Jack, I remember very clearly, I had this conversation with Ayaan. I called you, it was a weekend, it was late at night, I couldn't wait to tell you about it. And I don't know if you remember your response, but when I told you and I explained who she was, it went silent for a while. And I thought, I think I even said, "Are you there?" And then I heard you crying. I heard you crying in the moment, and then I started crying. And I guess I just want you to say, what were you thinking, and why was that your response in that moment? It just felt like a release of something.
Yeah. Well, you asked me if I knew who Ayaan was, and I confessed that I didn't, so you told me who she was and explained the whole story. And I just was stunned how God was using this little cake shop and ADF to keep us, part of ADF's mission statement is to keep the doors open for the gospel. And we get to do that sometimes face-to-face with people. And then I hear that she understood the gospel in part because of our story. I'm like, God is just so good. I was just stunned.
Yeah. Well, you remind us what St. Paul went through and all the other martyrs. That's the story of the gospel, that you stand firm. And I hope you live long. Yeah.
You want to go?
Yeah. The Colson Center and Focus on the Family had the privilege of working together on a film that had the opportunity to both learn from Ayaan on many of the things about Western civilization and the roots of our culture, but also a little of her story, and also we were able to tell Jack's story. So thank you both for that. And really the whole point is how can we be faithful to what God has called us to? I've been thinking a lot about you, Jack, since that film came out, and watching your story, which I've known you for a decade, and I've known the story well. I feel like every time we talk, I learn more about it. But I remember 14 years ago, sitting on my front porch on a Saturday morning, reading the newspaper. Do you remember newspapers, through these paper things?
Yes.
I was reading one in Colorado Springs, and there was a story. Denver baker refuses to bake cake for same-sex wedding. And I thought two things. Number one is, well, that's weird. Colorado doesn't have same-sex weddings, which at the time we didn't, which is weird that you would get in trouble for that. And then the second thing I thought was, man, that guy's going to be in trouble. And it's a story that I wouldn't wish on anyone. And the more I've thought about it in the last couple months, I've remembered something else. And I just want to hear your reaction to it. And Kristen, I want to hear your reaction to it. And Ayaan, your reaction to it. Because I remember how many people, how many Christians, how many Christian leaders said Jesus would have baked the cake.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember that? It was a remarkable amount of voices. Just bake the cake, Jesus would have baked the cake. And you know what I thought, Jack, is that if you had baked the cake, we wouldn't be here tonight. This story wouldn't be here in the same way. God's faithful. He would have called Ayaan in his way, but it just wouldn't have been like this. And I know you have other stories of people who have come to Christ because you were willing to say no. You were willing to say this is what's true and I won't compromise that. If you had baked the cake, we would not know your name. The United States would not have more robust protections around speech and freedom of religion.
Yes.
I'm really glad you didn't bake the cake.
Thank you.
But and you've inspired my own family and my own kids, but that's another thing for another day. What do you think of now when you remember those people that told you to just bake the cake and that Jesus, how do you react to that now?
God tells us to live by truth. He says we need to know the truth, and the truth will set us free. And Jesus is the truth. And we just have to know him, and we get to know him better and more clearly through his word, through good teaching, by spending time with him. And when the more time you spend with him, the better you know him. And you don't want to disappoint somebody you know well. And it would have been a huge disappointment to him if I'd have done that, when he's given us the power to live by what he says. And people want good news. There are tons of people that I talk to who have been encouraged by this story. And I think if I would have made the cake, I don't know. Because we've had so many things that have just happened that have been so good. Tonight is one of them.
Well, Kristen, if I remember correctly, one of the people that said Jesus would have baked the cake said it to both of you, and that was the ladies on The View.
Yeah.
Right? Isn't that true?
Expect that,
Joy
though.
Behar.
Oh, Joy, yeah.
That
was,
yeah.
you should YouTube that one later. Wow. What
think,
is your perspective on that?
I think, too, though, just remembering a couple things. And one is that in Jack's situation, as in all of these situations, and I know you said this before, was he modeled tolerance and the other side did not. And so it's not about refusing to serve, because
Right.
Jack serves everyone.
Everybody.
But when the government can compel you, as Ayaan talked about, to speak messages and affirm lies that violate your conscience, then there is no limit to the government's power. And you're moving to those places that Ayaan warned about tonight. So that's really what that was about, was the message that he was being asked to communicate. And I can tell you, having talked to hundreds of people over the last 10 years, that they have said that courage begets courage. And they've modeled that because they heard of Jack's story, and it caused them to consider Christ and come to salvation, but it also caused them to be courageous in their moment. One example that comes to mind is Sherry Laurie from Downtown Hope Center, who runs a homeless shelter in Alaska. And a man who identifies as a woman wanted to come into that shelter, sleeping 3 feet away from the women in the shelter. And as she's coming down the stairs, she knows that the man is at the door wanting to come in, and that he has a reputation that would suggest that would not be a good thing, even aside from the fact that he's a man, the violent tendencies and things like that. And what goes through her mind is, remember the baker.
Yes.
So she gives that man cab money to go to the hospital to get his wounds, because he was in a fight, cared for. But she does not let him. She keeps that safe space for those women. So that's what I think of, is all the people that it has inspired as well. And just, I'm so grateful to people like Ayaan, who have been willing not just to talk about her personal faith journey, but they're willing to go and fight publicly for the truth of Christianity, and that it is the foundation of Western civilization. We cannot give up that ground, because those truths come from the Scripture. That is where the rule of law comes from. That is where equality comes from. And that is where the right of conscience comes from. So,
And Ayaan, there's no question that your story is also inspiring a lot of people as well. I have had the privilege of being in London when you first announced to a room gathered, the art conference, that you were a Judeo-Christian, I think is how you put it.
Yeah.
And I heard 1,000 people gasp. And they were like, really?
Yeah.
And what's that mean? And then to follow that up at the last event, and since then, your articulation of Holy Scripture, your commitment to grow deeper in your faith and to stand up and courageously, not just stand up for kind of philosophical truths, but for Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And it's inspiring, and it's an honor to have shared this evening with you. But I want to give you the last word here, I think, because I think we're about at the end of our time. But I want to give you the last word here when you hear, when you're reminded of those voices that told Jack, just bake the cake, just bake the cake. How would you charge us all to respond to that?
and where do you find hope? Because it's easy to go from this discussion and think, oh man, what's going to happen?
What is it? Yeah.
You just had to ask the last question.
Oh, no. Hope, John. Hope.
Actually, that's a really good question.
It actually is the last question.
All right.
Well, since I'm supposed to end, I first of all want to express my gratitude to you for doing this, for bringing me here. And of course, Kristen, you're my hero. And for a long time, I thought I could only go out and speak if only I was just as eloquent, as well-educated as Kristen. But I don't have to do that. I can come out broken, and I think that is, for me, the story of Jack. And again, immense gratitude towards you. Is today when I'm told, today when young students are told on university campuses, Jesus was a socialist. You are told, just bake the cake, Jesus would have done it. If you are told Jesus is a socialist, would you stand up to the people who are saying that and argue back? Maybe not as eloquently as Kristen, but maybe in this broken, accented English of mine. With very little knowledge of the Bible, I'm working on it. And yet, deep down, I know Jesus was not a socialist. Another way of corrupting the Bible, this is not some spontaneous reaction about, oh, Jesus was this way. No, we have whole theologies, a new reading of the Bible, the LGBTQ reading of the Bible, the feminist reading of the Bible, the decolonized reading of the Bible. If you as a young person, you are confronted with that, I want you to remember Jack. And stand up to whoever is saying that in your own way. The way God has gifted you to stand up to them, stand your ground and say, that is not true. You are corrupting the Bible. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart because you've given me that courage and that inspiration to say, no, Jesus would not have baked the cake. And as an atheist at the time, I thought, well, if reason has got anything to do with any of this, go find some other baker. Yeah. Thank you. Jesus would never come.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking Ayaan, John, Kristen, and Jack. As a special treat on your way out the door, we have some baked goods from Jack's Bakery for you. Thank you all. We are adjourned.